Yay. And I'm going to admit everyone into the room. So it's about 20 altogether, which I'm very happy with. Hi, everyone. I am so happy that you guys are here and listening. Today, we're going to discuss the path to law school. And I'm thrilled to share with you that our guest speaker is beyond an expert tutor for the Lsat. He went himself to NYU for law school. He's a native New Yorker, and he's going to really give you wholehearted advice to understanding the path to law school. He's going to speak a bit about the application to law school, which is incredible. And I'm so happy that you're here. If you're able to just type in the chat box what grade you're in, I think it's really going to help us to know. So I'm just going to write that in. What grade are you in? So this way we know where you stand. And just to share with you that I'm a lawyer and Jeff is a lawyer. So you're surrounded by lawyers today in this meeting. So I'm very excited to share that with you. And I also really want to say, like, I very much respect Jeff because he just wholeheartedly, like, he's not only a lawyer, like he has helped so many people become lawyers. So Jeff, throughout your life thus far, how many different people do you think you've helped become like lawyers, like go to law school?
Very tough to answer. I've been helping people with the LSAT and with their applications for law school for coming up on about 12 years. So in that time, I've literally worked with hundreds and hundreds of students of all sort of backgrounds and academic achievement levels, and helping them with all kinds of law schools. So, it's in the many hundreds.
So it's in the many hundreds. At probably, I want to say safely, can I say close to 1,000 students? I mean, throughout all these years, you've really worked with a lot of kids, like you've shaped. So Jeff is someone who produces future attorneys, and he helps, yay, and he helps them go to law school. And I'm so happy to just share with you that we are just really lucky right now because we have someone who's super pro. This is not just someone who himself is an admitted attorney, but he knows how to train and he knows how to, help others become attorneys. So I can't share how extremely lucky we are right now that you're the one leading this. If you're able to, so the students who are listening, I want you to feel very comfortable asking any questions that you have just about the pathway. And I think it's important just to kind of get started with maybe just some, I guess, Jeff, whatever is really just on your mind, like if you can give the high school students, I'm looking at the chat box. So let's take a look at what grades everyone is in, more or less.
Yeah,
so
we have a good range. It looks like we have 9th graders, 10th, 11th, 12th. Yeah.
So I see 11th. Yeah, it is. It's really a 9 to 12 group. So if you could just begin with giving some advice and some, suggestions, like starting with high school, where do we go? Where do we go from here?
One of the things I think that a lot of people wonder about with law school, it's a professional degree, just like becoming a doctor is. And a lot of people don't quite understand the difference between what it takes to become a doctor, what it takes to become a lawyer. If you want to become a doctor, when you get to college, you have to become pre-med, and you got to take a lot of science classes, and you have to be really, really dedicated and, very committed to it. To become a lawyer, there are many different paths to becoming a lawyer. There isn't just sort of one set of courses that you are required to take in college to go to law school. In fact, law schools will accept people with any major you can possibly think of. In fact, law schools like having people with different sort of academic backgrounds. They like having diversity in their classes. So what I recommend to people, especially if you're just considering it now, you're not even sure if you want to be a lawyer, don't be afraid to explore, certainly in terms of academics, don't be afraid to explore different areas of law in academics. When you get, if you're going to college, I see we have some people that are getting ready to go to college probably. You don't have to be pre-law, but you can take a course in some area of law that intrigues you. And that's, that's a good way to sort of get introduced to to one of the areas of law that there might be. There's so many different careers one can have as a lawyer that there really is no wrong set of courses or just experiences you could have to prepare for law school. Certain things that law schools do like, that lawyers have to be good at are would include things like writing and critical thinking. So if you find yourself interested in things like philosophy or just writing and being an English major, things like that. I myself was an English major. Law schools find that to be very interesting. They like really deep thinkers, but they also like people that are business oriented. They like people that are business majors. Law schools know that when those people go to law school, they're going to have a different kind of career trajectory than people that were philosophy majors. So there's really a million things one could do. The biggest thing is don't be afraid to try different things academically. So as far as the academics, that would be my immediate advice.
And then, so as they're, pursuing their path and their routes, I think some students don't realize that they can like volunteer at a courthouse or they can shadow a lawyer. I mean, if you have any thoughts or any suggestions on that, I think that myself, my own experience as a child of immigrants, like I had no idea that you could like volunteer at a courthouse. I had no idea that you could like intern for a lawyer or shadow for a lawyer. Like I just didn't know this stuff. So if you could kind of like make any suggestions or anything that you've observed.
Absolutely. And I mean, any and all of the above is productive and it really, there's sort of two sides to it. One is that sure, you want law schools to think that you're interested in law. And if you do an internship of some kind, that might help to show that. But really, probably the better reason to try to get an internship of some kind or volunteer experience is to figure out if you're really interested in it in the first place. There's so many, we see lawyers on TV a lot. If you watch any shows, there's all kinds of stuff involving lawyers, but that doesn't really tell you what a lot of the sort of nitty gritty of it, what goes on, like in courthouses, as Francis mentioned, or just, what about an immigration law firm, and if you want to understand how that process works. There's no sort of wrong way to try to do it. Again, it's about, so much of it has to do with like you taking some initiative to explore, to figure out what you want to do. And in terms of, internships and volunteer experiences, you pretty much need to just ask. If you're looking to volunteer for free, there's probably a lot of places that would love, be happy to have someone that they don't have to pay, but you can get a lot of good experience. Whether it's a law firm down the street, you could just walk in and say, hi, I'm really interested in learning about the law. Do you have any internships? Can I follow a lawyer? Or maybe your parents know some lawyers and you could talk to them. There's really an unlimited number of sort of avenues for this. Certainly there's going to be some things posted online in various places, I guess, but probably the better approach would be to walk into the door of a law firm, walk into the door of a courtroom, a courthouse, and sort of just ask. And any of experience that you get doing that is going to be good for law schools, but also it's going to be good for you. But it's going to help you to figure out if it's something you're really interested in.
And I can't stress how important it is to not be afraid to try. Just try to volunteer. You could even really just, for example, just in Forest Hills, right? Just in Forest Hills, there's so many different law firms and the summer is starting. You don't have to volunteer every single day, just a couple of hours a day just to get a feel and just to kind of explore this field. So some of you also should know this. I didn't know, and I'm really speaking honestly and sincerely. I didn't realize how valuable the legal education would be. Here I am today running a business, and I use my law degree and my knowledge in so many different ways. And I'm not a daily practicing traditional attorney. I don't go to court. But here I am using that knowledge. So, Jeff, if you could please elaborate on just the value of having a law degree, period.
So much of it has to do with just the critical thinking aspect and sort of language analysis that we learn in law school, and also ways to write in a very sort of legal kind of way. That what Francis just said is, it definitely applies to me as well. I mean, I went to law school and I practiced in a firm for a while, but then, after about 8 years, I basically left the law, at least the law firm, and I opened a restaurant and had my own business and got involved with things like liquor license law and property law, and because I had the experience and the background in critical analysis, um, that definitely was helpful in my life. There's so many different ways one can use a law degree. I mean, there's never anything negative about having that degree. Even if you're not someone who's going to do trials like you see on TV, not everybody is cut out to do trials. Um, some people become real estate attorneys and help people buy houses. Other people, like I mentioned, immigration law. I've worked with a lot of students that ended up going into immigration law. There's just so many different ways you can go, and if you go to law school, you would discover that just from the number of different kinds of courses that you're allowed to take, in terms of electives. So there really is, as far as degrees go, law is got to be the most versatile of all of them, I would say, more so than being a doctor or any other degree.
I loved how you added that because it's true. Because so in my life, as I went from really being a child to an adult, this time in my life where I'm positioned first home, legal knowledge I'm using. And little did I know that becoming a lawyer, you don't just become a lawyer, you also become a real estate agent and a broker and a notary. And Jeff, if you could elaborate kind of on what all that does. So believe it or not, and I'm speaking truthfully, I didn't know any of it. When you become a lawyer, you're not just a lawyer, you have like a bunch of other skills that you automatically get, and it all ties in to your degree. So Jeff, if you could take it and tell me, what else are you besides a lawyer?
Well, you mentioned notary. I mean, that a notary is just, is someone who can sign official documents and, with a stamp to show that they've verified the identity of the person signing. And many documents in our lives require notary signatures. Like if you want to buy a house, there's all kinds of issues that come up that have to, where the papers have to be notarized. I'm not sure what you mean about you becoming other things. I mean,
So you're
you know,
also, you have a real estate, you have a broker's license, like you just have a lot of other
well, I mean,
credentials.
I don't know that you're a broker. I mean,
So
I- I've,
so
I've done a lot. I've done a number of closings. I've helped people buy houses, but as representing the seller or the buyer.
So something that I noticed was that I was able to sit through a closing and I actually understood what was going on. And there's no way that would have happened if I didn't have my law degree. So here I am, not traditionally practicing it. Like it's not like what you see on TV where you like wear a suit and go to court, but I understand what's going on. So, and then there's another field that again, these are the surprises that happen. So here I am running a business, I'm working with employees, I'm working with a staff, and I'm learning how to put together employment agreements, and I'm learning how to deconstruct really complicated forms. I had to sign a lease to get into my, tutoring business location in Queens and then another one in Manhattan. And I just couldn't get over how much of that legal knowledge later is coming my way. And then kind of as an adult, so I become an adult, and this is like a whole separate Zoom if I had to have one. But so you put together a will and you go through, like, you retain so this is very interesting. Every major milestone in your life is actually like a legal milestone. And it's interesting because we're having this webinar and I get to like reflect on this reality. Every major part of your life is connected to the law. And I just can't get over it. It's like everything, every decision I make in my business, I'm always thinking about like a legal consequence, and everything has a contract. So now I work with schools and we're under contracts. Like I just can't get over it. Like everything's legal. Like I'm at the hospital I had a child recently, a newborn, and like they made me sign like 20 legal documents or else they wouldn't even like birth my baby. So there's so many parts of life where so forget about like actually going to law school or becoming a day-to-day practicing attorney. You're like a day-to-day human being and you're using your law degree, which is really wild if you think about it. So I want to share that with you, and Jeff can absolutely elaborate on this. You are really a lawyer 24/7, and it's just a remarkable gift you have after, continuing and getting this degree. If you want to add anything to what I just said, Jeff, that would be amazing. But I also want to go into the mechanics of like step by step of applying to law school. I
For
also,
sure.
if you could, and then I want to go into the like mechanical part of it. Go ahead.
Happy to do that. I noticed that there was a question from Emmanuel who asked, how many degrees do you have to get to be a lawyer? And what age do you have to be? There's no specific age limitation on it, but you basically, the standard situation is you get your undergraduate degree from college, and then you would get then the law degree, which normally takes 3 years of full-time school in addition to regular undergraduate college. So there are some exceptions to that. There are some accelerated programs where you can get it in 2 years, or if you go part-time in the evening, there are a number of schools that give part-time programs where it might take 4 years to complete that degree. But there's no specific age requirement on it. You're welcome, Manuel. As far as the application itself, so you're asking about the nuts and bolts of the application?
So yeah, I think that that's also like it blew me away. Like they don't like how do you what's the path, like the technical path? So do you need to take like an entrance exam? Like how do you get into law school? Like do you just like say that you want to go? Is it like Legally Blonde, like the movie where you just kind of like said I'm gonna do this and you have this epiphany?
It,
What's the
it,
steps? We want to know the steps.
it can be like that. As I mentioned before, to go to law school, you don't have to take any specific courses. They don't require any academic courses in your undergraduate program. You could be a music major, you could be an engineering major, you could be a nursing student, you could be an English major like I was. Literally anything is possible to go to law school. They're interested in everybody. As far as what it takes to actually go to law school, pretty much every school requires a test like the SAT. Now, the main one is called the Lsat. I'm an Lsat instructor. That's what I've been doing for 12 years. I've been teaching the Lsat. That is the main test that people take to try to get into law school. However, in the last 5-6 years, there have been a number of schools that have also been accepting the GRE, which is a different grad level test. It's a test you take to get different kinds of graduate degrees. A number of law schools will take that too, but the LSAT is accepted by everybody. The GRE is not, so most people still take the LSAT. And the LSAT it's not an academic test in the sense of math and science and memorizing facts and information. It's a test of critical reading, critical thinking, and logic. That's why I teach it, because you have to sort of think about things the right way to really succeed on this test, to get a really good score. You have to be very, very critical of all the language that they use, and be very good at sort of making deductions from things that they tell you, understanding arguments, argumentation. There are many, many different sort of things they ask you to do on the LSAT. Would you like me to show an example, Francis?
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful. Who wants to see what first of all, who's even heard of that, the LSAT, and who would like to see, like, kind of like get a sneak peek on what's on an LSAT? Who wants to like get a peek at it? Let's do it. Let's go see.
So I'll show you a couple different things. The LSAT has 3 different parts to it. And I'm going to share my screen to show you one part right here.
And by the way, everyone, while he's setting up, I just want to share that I'm so happy that there are 30 people who are part of this. And I know that the email went out today. So I just want to thank everyone for being part of this group right now. It really means a lot that you're in this. And, and we're really making these events happen for your school. I'm beyond like thrilled that it's working. So this is so cool. So we're going to see what the LSAT question.
So can you see what I've, is it up what I've shared? I have it screen sharing is on.
We see it. Maybe can we make it larger?
I can make my screen larger. Better. How's that? Well, now
yeah, that's good. So is this what are we looking at? A real exam? Is this
this is from a recent test. This is one of the sections of the LSAT called Analytical Reasoning, also known as logic games. This is one of the sections that counts, and this is an example of what they might give you in this section of the test. So if you look here at this is called the scenario. This is a very typical kind of scenario. They give you some information. So the participants in an experiment to evaluate the impact of expert witness testimony will divide into 6 groups according to occupation: judges, lawyers, doctors, nurses, police officers, teachers. The groups will be evaluated separately, one after another, in accordance with the following conditions. This is actually one of the standard kinds of logic games that they will do. This is, and we're actually putting some things in order. And if you look at these rules that are coming up here, that right under that paragraph, the teachers are evaluated before the doctors and before the nurses. The doctors are evaluated before the lawyers. The nurses are evaluated either before or after the police officers. Police officers are evaluated sometime between the judges and the lawyers. That is information that we have to organize and use to answer a bunch of questions. So for example, number 1 is asking what could be a possible acceptable order. Number 2 here is asking which group could be 6th. Some other questions that they will ask. You see the other questions here on this next page. If the lawyers are evaluated before the judges, what could be true? If the police officers are 5th, which must be true? A lot of different kinds of questions. And we're just trying to organize it. And just to quickly show you what I would do with this game, what I would teach anybody to do with this game, is make a diagram that looks like that. I'm just making a diagram. I'll show you what this is going to look like. We have judges, lawyers, doctors, nurses, police, and teachers. Teachers before the doctors and the nurses, doctors before the lawyers, nurses, police officers, and now this may not make any sense so far at the moment, but this is what it would end up looking like. And so one of the things we have to do on the LSAT is, can you actually see what I have up here? Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. So this is what the diagram would look like. So we're trying to turn this information into something visual that we can understand, and then we take these rules and what I have here, and we would use it to answer questions. That's just one of the sections of the LSAT. Some people find it very challenging, but it is a section that you can really learn a lot of fantastic techniques, and really get much better at it, even if it looks a little frightening to start. Should we look at a different section of the test, Francis? What do you think?
Yeah, let's do every section, so this way they get a clear picture of what the exam entails.
Okay. Now, this section should look familiar, what I'm pulling up right now. Coming up in 1 second. Okay. This is going to look familiar to all of you. Probably if you've taken the SAT. This is reading comp. Reading comp is exactly what you think it is. They will give you a fairly long passage. and they'll ask you some questions about it. Nothing terribly mysterious about it. But if you take in the SAT, you might be surprised how much harder the LSAT reading comp is than the SAT. Nothing terribly, nothing terribly wacky about it, but very challenging. And then the other section is called logical reasoning. I'm pulling that up right now. Okay, so here's logical reasoning. Logical reasoning is where they'll give you a paragraph, and then they'll ask you a question about that paragraph of some type of question. And there are many types of questions. Many of these paragraphs contain some kind of argument, and it is very important that we get really good at recognizing what the argument is, what's the structure of the argument, what support did they give for the conclusion, what premises. And they'll ask you all kinds of questions, the most basic of which are like number 5 right here. Which of the following is most strongly supported by the information above? So that's a question where we find the answer by looking back at the paragraph and finding something in that paragraph that would support the question. Question number 7, right next to it. The argument is vulnerable to criticism on the grounds that this is what we would call a flaw question. What is wrong? They're asking you to identify what's wrong with someone's argument. Number 8 is asking us to find something that would support the argument above. So you can probably get the idea here that they really ask you to do a lot of different things in a very short, relatively short amount of time. Each section is 35 minutes. This particular section is either going to have 25 or 26 questions. That's a lot to get through in 35 minutes. That's why, like, this whole idea of critical thinking and really careful language analysis is so important. This is sort of the beginnings of it. You go to law school and you're only going to learn more about how to do that, about how to reason critically and really rip apart arguments and be very critical of language and things like that. So that is the LSAT. The LSAT is right now consists of 3 sections, one of each of the ones I just showed you, 35 minutes per section. The LSAT is currently being administered remotely because of the COVID, but probably by the time most of you are considering applying, it'll go back to in person, and they give it on a tablet, and you go sit in a room full of people with a tablet and take this test. So what else do you think I could share about this, Francis?
What do you think are the values of these sections? Like, what do you think they're trying to test?
The main thing, people ask that like a lot all the time. Like, what does this have to do with being a lawyer? Well, not much. It does, it's not testing legal knowledge at all. It really doesn't have much to do with becoming a lawyer in law school. But as I said, it does involve the kinds of skills that lawyers need to use: critical reading, critical thinking, logical analysis. And law schools seem to feel this test has been given like this for many years, and law schools seem pretty confident that differences in the scores on this test sort of help them to understand what kind of sort of logical mind different people might have. And I think there is some truth to that, but it doesn't if you don't get the top score on the LSAT, that doesn't mean you're not going to be a good lawyer. Those are not the same thing at all. But certainly the skills that lawyers often have to use, this test does test that.
So can you go through, did you go through all the parts of the LSAT just now?
Yeah, there's the three different sections that are scored: the reading comp, the logical reasoning, and the games. I briefly showed them all.
So can you just tell us about the law school application? And by the way, if any of you have questions, you can ask any questions you want. I just want to kind of move it along because we have an hour and I want to cover a lot. But can you go through an application, maybe a personal statement, like kind of just explain like the mechanics, like the technical steps? Okay, and we'll go through.
Sure.
By the way, who's finding this helpful? Who's learning something?
I'm sorry I didn't see this question before. Let me just answer this question. The format of the exam and the time and all that, as I was talking about it a little. As of right now, it's 3 sections, 35 minutes per section, all consecutive. It's going to switch to 4 sections, where one of the sections is what's called experimental, where they're testing questions out. When it ends up being an in-person test again, it should end up being a 5-section test, which is what it was for many years, where you'd have 2 logical reasoning sections, 1 game section, 1 reading comp section, and an experimental section. And I'll mention as well that also as part of the test, there is a writing sample, but that's not scored, and it's not even done at the same time as the regular scored part of the test. It's something you do on your own separately that you submit, and it goes with your application. So that brings me to the application. Law school applications are annoying because, unlike regular college applications, there is no common application. You don't just do one common app for all the law schools that you want to apply to. Every law school potentially has their own separate requirements for what they want to see on their application. That being said, most of the application is pretty much just inputting information about yourself. There's not much on the application, at least the part that we consider like the application page. There's not too much on it. It's all your personal information, your background information, your experience. You would upload a resume too, but they want you to put the experience down usually. And there might be some extra things like, why do you want to go to our law school? But most of it is really just sort of basic information. In addition to that, everybody's required to do a personal statement, just like for college. Law school personal statements are not exactly the same as college personal statements. They expect different kinds of things potentially in the in the personal statement. Personal statements are one of the things that I spend a lot of time with people on, because a lot of people don't know what they really should sort of include in a personal statement, what they should write about. Law schools mostly don't give you a lot of guidance on that. They'll tell you, all right, send us a personal statement. You can write about anything you want, or words to that effect. There are some schools, and this goes again back to what I said, there is no common app, so every school can do their own thing. There are some schools that specifically will ask, as part of the personal statement, that you tell them why you want to go to law school or what you're interested in studying in law. But most schools don't ask that. So the personal statement for law school is really, you have to think of it as the opportunity to show the law school something about you that is great, that we hope is going to make the law schools want you to come be a student there. And there's a lot of ways you can write a personal statement that can be effective. You don't have to write about why you want to go to law school. I mean, if you have a good reason for why you want to go to law school, a very interesting reason that says a lot about you, then great, write about that. But a lot of people don't have a specifically great reason. You can write about personal experiences you've had that have been particularly meaningful. You can write about things that you've done that you've been very passionate about. Adversity that you've overcome. If you have that in your life, you could write about that. For philosophy majors, I mentioned philosophy before. I've worked on philosophy personal statements, where it's just people that are just these really deep thinkers, and they're thinking these deep thoughts about life and the world, and they just, they're showing just how amazingly they like to think. And law schools, believe it or not, like that, because law is based on philosophy. On the other hand, for people that have been business majors in college, for them it's more about like, here's some business related things that I've done. Here's where I figured out that I'm a great business leader. Things like that. There's all kinds of different things people can write about. I do have some samples. Did you want to see any samples, Francis?
Oh yeah. Who wants to see samples? Show me. Show of hands. Show of. Just say yes in the chat. Who wants to see samples? Samples.
Me. Someone says me. Okay.
Yay. Thanks, guys. Okay. Who wants to see samples?
I have a whole bunch. here's an interesting one that I was looking at today from not that long ago. Pulling it up, and let me share it as soon as I can. Second. Here. Where'd it go? Okay, sorry for the delay. I will enlarge this as to make it as big as I can. Where is, why can't I make it bigger? What's going on? Oh, sorry guys. Here we go.
So this is a real sample. This was an accepted student's essay, right?
Yeah, this is someone why can't I make this bigger? Oh, my goodness.
Just, you can hit Control Plus, or you can Control Plus.
Not in this program. It's not. It's some. I don't know what's going.
Just hit Control A and then make it like size 20 fonts. You could do that also.
I'll enlarge the font. Okay. It's not filling the screen the way it should. All right. This is, can you see?
That works.
This is not my intention, but okay. So this statement was not about why this person wanted to go to law school. It was more of an sort of a reflective piece on their sort of personal evolution. As you can see, look at the first sentence. As I prepare for law school, I'm amazed at the evolution of my way of thinking over the past few years. So this is one where the person was going to write about just how their view of of life and thinking has changed and matured and that kind of thing. As you can see, they mention being interested in law going back to high school. They did mock trial, but then mock trial started to make them think in a certain way, and so that experience, they were impressed. They really loved how it made them sort of change how they thought about things, how they were critical. And then if you can see here, they had a great experience in mock trial, but then they did this internship in California, in Hollywood, right? Where they thought they were going to do all this helpful stuff, and they realized that their critical thinking was not yet complete, not yet right, not yet where they wanted it to be. This person, as you can see, they talked about how they had the statistical information, and now they were wanted to help with homelessness, solve problems. But then they ran into, not a problem, but they realized that they needed to learn more about actually how to deal with and connect with the people that came into this help center, right? So this is a great example of a personal statement that is not about law specifically, as opposed to about this person and how they changed over time. And that's a great kind of statement, because law schools really like when someone is able to sort of reflect back on their own lives and understand the things that have helped to shape them, the things that sort of made them who they are, and this helps to show them, show the law school who this person is, and hopefully makes the law school think, wow, yeah, we want thinkers like this. We want people that are critical. We don't want people that just are looking for to come to law school just to make some money as a lawyer. So that is this statement. What do you think, Francis? Any questions about this statement?
I think it's so important to show in this that this is an example, again, of someone who's kind of going through chapters and channels and saying, this is why I'm gonna, pursue law school. Do you have any other samples, or is this one?
I do. Let me
let's do one more. So we'll get
that. I'll give you a different type.
And I hope that this is very helpful for those of you who are in the group. I really do. I sincerely, like, I hope that you're learning. Who's learning? Kind of. Who's learning? Guys, I'm trying to make it lively here. Who's learning? Yay.
Okay, here's this one. This one is pretty funny. I like this one a lot. Let me share it. Why can't I share it? Here we go. Share screen and okay, we're sharing this one. And I will enlarge this. You might want to read the first paragraph if you can see it.
Go ahead. So do you want,
Want me to read it?
Yeah, could you? That would be great.
When I grow up, I want to be a gynecologist. This declaration and the slideshow presentation that accompanied it got me into a lot of trouble. I was only 8 after all. But I knew early on that I loved science. In college, between research and internships, I discovered that my passion lies specifically in coding, both genetic and computer-based. Becoming a lawyer never once crossed my mind. I had long determined that I lacked what I thought were the prerequisites for being an attorney: arrogance and pigheadedness. It wasn't on my radar. This is to me, this was a tremendous opening to a statement because, first of all, there's nothing wrong with making the person reading your application laugh a little bit. And I think that's a pretty funny statement. I want to be a gynecologist. For someone who's 8 years old to say that, we thought that would be get their attention. But then, of course, in the rest of the paragraph, this person talks about how they had no intention of being a lawyer. So this statement is about how this person started there, but then came around to wanting to go to law school. So if you look at
I'm actually curious. Can you read one more paragraph? I just want to see how it pivots.
Sure. While I excelled in humanities classes in high school, science was my priority in college. The surprising idea of combining both began to form within the last year or so on an otherwise normal day. The usually comforting but eerie silence of the lab was disrupted by the director. "You will not believe this. I can't believe this." She had just learned that all of our work on a recent case had been in vain since the patient had just passed away, not from the wrong treatment, but from no treatment at all. The insurance company had refused to continue to cover the patient's costs. And while they were sorting it out, he died. I couldn't believe it myself. So as usual, I did some research and found that this wasn't the first and wouldn't be the last time this occurred. Later, I brought this up with my mom, a social worker with cancer patients. And she said that while, yes, patients' lives are controlled by insurance companies, there are times when a patient is treated anyway due to the efforts of a lawyer. Though that moment changed how I see the world, I hadn't yet realized my true path. You want me to continue? Because I think it's a great story.
I really like it. Yeah, let's keep going.
Things started to crystallize for me a couple of months later when I went to visit my mentor and previous boss at the bioinformatics lab at Hunter College, where he had started to develop an artificial intelligence model for the progression of Lyme disease. He spoke about their disheartening difficulties conveying their dire need for privacy and security to the lawyer, helping them patent our idea. Even though the lawyer had the technical knowledge to understand our product, because science, especially the emerging field of bioinformatics, is constantly evolving, it required a deeper technical knowledge. Because of this gap, the lawyer didn't really get it, and the lab felt as if their ideas weren't worth the difficulties of releasing them to the public. Maybe they should just stick to research instead of trying commercialization. Surely this was not the only time this situation had happened. This sparked an interest in me, and I was determined to learn more about it. Without reading the whole thing, what happened is that this student went to a panel at the Bar Association and started talking to lawyers about this issue, about technical knowledge and lawyers and some of the issues and algorithms. It gets very complicated technically, but this person was doing very complicated technical work.
Can you read maybe, how about the last like 2 paragraphs? I just want to see how it closes up. Is that okay, guys? Let's see how we close up the essay.
Okay, I guess we're getting there. So they went to this Bar Association talk, And then I'm in the middle of the page. As I listened to them talk about possible solutions, filtering the data to erase human mistakes and prejudices, or changing the algorithm somehow, I found myself thinking, what if the answer is simpler? There is no reason to hide from our nation's racist, sexist, and otherist past. It is part of our history. What if we can learn and grow through it? If the algorithm highlights the darkest parts of who we are, maybe even trends we were otherwise unaware of, we have the power to correct them so that they won't be part of our future. We don't use the algorithms to guide our lives and tell us what to do, but we use them, as their name suggests, as tools to fix the mistakes of our past for a better tomorrow, thereby creating new data to feed into the model, this time without the biases of before. As I further immersed myself in the law, meeting with lawyers, discussing various topics, I realized that their bark is worse than their bite, and that their reputation from the movies is far from the truth. There are people who want to change the world, and with a domino effect, all the experiences I had in the past year fell together. This is where I belong. This is my path, my ikigai. It might be naive of me to think that my ideas can tip the scale, but I believe it with every cell in my body. Being a lawyer will allow me to advocate for those who cannot speak for themselves, whether they are sick in a hospital bed or across the hall, finding a cure for the patient's infectious disease. My background is technology, science, my background in science, technology, and healthcare give me the background knowledge to both tackle issues in these particular fields, as well as the ability to empathize and understand their plight. This is why I'm applying to law school. This student is currently at Cardozo Law School.
I really like the essay because it shows that, you can pivot, and that's so important, that you don't have to have just one field. And if you could kind of touch on that again, it's really important. This is a student who was a science person for many years, right? So if you could just
she absolutely was. Yes, she was doing stuff that I couldn't even tell you what she was doing. Bioinformatics. She explained it to me one time, and I can't for the life of me, I couldn't remember it. But she discussed, it just goes to show you that law pervades, like, sort of any career you're considering. There's going to be lawyers involved in some way. So if this person found that seeing things from the perspective of a lawyer, she would, and as I recall, she found it much more interesting, the idea of helping people as a lawyer, as opposed to being someone that just sat in a lab testing stuff in a lab, which is not surprising for a lot of people, because as a lawyer, you're not just sitting around in the lab. You're getting out there, you're meeting actual clients, you're trying to get things done for clients, and it's a different sort of career path than sitting in a lab, and that was exciting for her, and she's doing great.
And you can change laws, like you can write bills, you can draft, you can affect legislation. So they're just, I think that I really want to thank you, Jeff, and everyone. If you could please go in the chat box, give Jeff a huge thank you, because we're already closing up the hour, and really, spending your time volunteering, not paid for this hour. If all of you could take a moment to give Jeff a 5-star review, because he really took his time. I mean it. He took his time. And this is really a favor. This was just a simple ask. Like, can you, speak to a bunch of kids in high school and tell them, truthfully about your experience. So I want to, just if we could please give him a 5-star, that he's been amazing. I'm putting the link in here. Jeff, you're getting a ton of thank yous. Okay. And
I see all these thank yous. You're all so welcome. And don't hesitate to to get in touch. You can, through Francis, you can, if you have any more questions, you definitely can. Should I give them my email address, Francis? Or
no, I don't want to like, we'll channel it, because they have the contact through Kweller, just to keep it here. But
talk to Francis, she'll forward it to me.
Yeah, and what I want to share with you, that you should know, is that there's not just one traditional path, and you should know that there's help and resources, there's tutors, there's all sorts of outreach available to help you. And it's not just about being, I hope that you take this piece home with you. It's not just about being a practicing visual, I put on a suit, I go to work in a courthouse, 9 to 5. Like, that's, even though maybe that's the image, you might see that image in the media, and you might see that, like, it's really not the reality of being a lawyer, because there is so much that you can do with this degree, and it's an incredibly powerful degree. And you just have to remember also, knowledge is power. And you'll always have this knowledge. So Jeff, you did such a great job. Something that I love to do when we close up the webinars is I take the kids off mute and they give you a big, huge group thank you. So I'm going to ask everyone to unmute, give Jeff a big thank you for his time, for his really volunteerism right now. So everyone, if you could please, let's do it on 3. We'll say thank you, Jeff. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you,
all very welcome. You're all very welcome.
Jeff. Thank you. Really all that got so much out of this. It was a lot of content in 1 hour, and it means so much. And if you guys are able to, please do a nice Google review. Here's the link. Again, it just a sentence is good enough, but it acknowledges, you know, Jeff's efforts and definitely the efforts of Kweller Prep. You know who. All right. So please keep that in mind. All right. And Jeff, you look great. Blue is definitely your color. And I love all those degrees. It very,
Those are real. I didn't just download those. Those are real, you know.
I'm really impressed with how incredible your background looks. And I want to say thank you for adding Kweller Prep to your background. It feels good to be acknowledged. I must say it looks very good. Kweller, you really got the whole setup. Thank you so much for preparing for this as well as you did. And I can't stress, Jeff is doing this. He's volunteering this tonight. So you were really, really good. Okay. Thank you, everyone. And hopefully we will see all of you sooner than later. And again, I'm putting the link in. It's a Kweller Prep review on Google. It means a lot. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jeff. Take care. Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone.
谢谢，非常感谢。咦？